Everybody asks me the same question. What's the secret? I'm 103 years old. I still wake up at 5. I still make my own coffee. I still sit in the same chair I've been sitting in since 1951. That chair, that's the secret. But nobody believes me when I say it, so I have to tell you the whole story. My name is Amos. I grew up in Twiggs County, Georgia, the kind of place where your nearest neighbor was a mile of red dirt away. My father picked cotton until his back curved like a question mark. My mother washed clothes for white families in Macon and walked 6 miles home every night carrying the smell of someone else's house on her skin. I left Georgia in 1943. I was 23 years old. Took a Greyhound bus to Detroit with a cardboard suitcase and $11. I got a job at the Rouge plant, Ford Motor Company. I stood on an assembly line for 31 years bolting fenders onto trucks. $11. That's what I started with. And a name that nobody in Michigan could spell right. I met Nadine at a church supper in October of 1950. She was sitting across the room eating potato salad with a fork in one hand and reading a library book with the other. She was the only person in that room doing two things at once. Everybody else was talking. She was reading. I walked over. I said, "What's the book?" She looked up and said, "None of your business." I said, "Fair enough." She said, "Sit down." So I sat down. That was the beginning of everything. We married in April of 1951. Moved into a house on Claremont Avenue. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that was so small you couldn't open the oven and the refrigerator at the same time. The floor sloped toward the back door. The pipes froze every January. But Nadine didn't care about the house. She cared about the kitchen. Specifically, she cared about the table. The first thing she bought, before curtains, before a rug, before anything, was a kitchen table. Oak, 4 legs. She found it at a secondhand shop on Gratiot Avenue for $6. And she bought 2 chairs, not 4, 2. I said, "Nadine, what if people come over?" She said, "Then they'll stand." She painted those chairs green, both of them. Same green as the shutters on her mother's house in Alabama. She put them on opposite sides of the table. Hers faced the window. Mine faced her. And every single night for the next 73 years, we sat in those chairs. I'm going to say that again because I need you to hear it. Every single night. We didn't miss a night. Not when I worked double shifts at the plant. Not when the children were screaming. Not when we were so angry at each other we couldn't look up from our plates. Not when Detroit burned in '67 and you could see the smoke from our kitchen window. Not when our son James died in Vietnam in 1969 and Nadine didn't speak for 11 days. 11 days of silence. And still, every night, she sat in that green chair. And I sat in mine. We didn't talk, we didn't eat, we just sat there. Because sitting there was the promise. I never understood what that table meant to her until the night James's body came home. The army brought him to the house. Nadine was in the kitchen. She heard the car doors. She heard the footsteps. She heard the knock. She didn't go to the door. She sat down in her green chair. She put both hands flat on the table. And she said, "Tell them to come in here." They carried the flag into the kitchen. They put it on the table between us. And Nadine looked at me across that flag and said 5 words. "Don't you leave this chair." She wasn't talking about the furniture. She was talking about the marriage. She was talking about the promise. She was saying, people leave, children die, the world burns, but you and I sit here. That's the deal. That's the whole deal. I didn't leave the chair. People ask me about happiness. They want a big answer. They want a philosophy. They want 5 habits and a morning routine. I'm going to disappoint you. The secret to my happiness is a $6 table and 2 green chairs. It's showing up. That's it. Showing up to the same table, the same person, the same chair every single night. Even when you don't want to. especially when you don't want to. In 1974, Nadine and I almost split. I'm not going to tell you the details because she'd haunt me, but it was bad. We didn't speak for 3 weeks. I slept on the couch. I thought about leaving. I called my sister in Georgia. She said, come home. But every night at 6 o'clock, I walked into that kitchen, and Nadine was already in her chair. Not because she forgave me, she hadn't, but because the chair was the deal. On the 22nd night, she looked at me and said, you done being stupid? I said, I think so. She said, pass the salt. That was the reconciliation. No therapy, no big conversation. Pass the salt. 22 nights of showing up to a table where nobody was talking, and then salt. Our kids thought we were crazy. Our son Michael used to say, Mama, why do you eat at that tiny table? You got a whole dining room. She'd say the dining room is for guests. The kitchen is for us. She was right. The dining room had a big table with 6 chairs and a centerpiece that nobody ever touched. That was for show. The kitchen table was for truth. Everything that mattered in our marriage happened at that table. The fights, the apologies, the night she told me she was pregnant with James, the morning I told her I got laid off. The afternoon Michael got into Howard University and we cried into our coffee. All of it. Same table, same chairs, same green paint that she touched up every 5 years with the same can from the hardware store on Livernois. Nadine died on January 7, 2024. She was 96 years old, congestive heart failure. She died in our bedroom, in our bed, holding my hand. The last morning she was conscious, she asked me to help her to the kitchen. I said, Nadine, you can't walk. She said, then carry me. She weighed 89 pounds. I'm 103 years old. And I carried my wife to the kitchen and put her in a green chair. She sat there for 40 minutes. Didn't eat, didn't drink, just sat and looked out the window. Then she looked at me. And she said, how many nights, Amos? I said, 26,645. She closed her eyes and smiled. She'd been counting too. I carried her back to bed. She died the next morning. 26,645 nights. That's 73 years of sitting in a green chair across from the same woman. And every single one of those nights is the reason I'm still here. Not the food I ate, not the exercise, not the gene, the chair. I still sit in my chair every night. 6 o'clock. Her chair is across from me, empty. A coffee cup is still on the shelf. I don't use it. I don't move it. The table has a scratch on the left side from when Michael dragged his toy truck across it in 1960. It has a water ring from Nadine's coffee cup that I'll never wipe off. Last month, my granddaughter Keisha was helping me clean. She turned Nadine's chair over to dust the legs, and she stopped. She called me over. On the underside of the seat, carved into the wood in Nadine's handwriting, small letters, pressed hard with a ballpoint pen, were 2 words, still here. She must have done it years ago, maybe decades. I don't know when. But at some point, Nadine turned that chair over and carved those words into the bottom where nobody would see them. Still here. That's the secret. Not joy, not gratitude, not choosing happiness. Those are fine words. But the real secret is simpler than that. Still here, still sitting, still showing up, still across the table from someone who matters. If you have someone who sits across from you at a table, on a couch, in a car, anywhere, and you've been showing up every day, you already know the secret. You just forgot to call it what it is. And if you've been skipping the table, go sit down. Tonight, don't say anything, just sit. If there's someone you stop sitting with, write it down. Just write, I stopped sitting with, and then the truth. That is all I got.